I've arrived. I am somebody.
Hey, welcome to the continuing Winemaker series here at the Wine of the Month Club, and very excited that we had Mr. Tim Gray stop by and say hi to us here, all the way from some part of Ohio, some part of England, and some part of Tuscany. But what a great story. So tell us about you. You're born and raised in Ohio. What happened?
Yeah, my dad is from a little place, one of those old steel towns called Steubenville, Ohio. On the west,
Steubenville,
yeah,
sure.
on the West Virginia border. Yeah, Jimmy the Greek and Dean Martin.
Right.
My mom's from Cleveland. And in the late 60s, they got moved over to the UK, to London, actually about an hour and a half north of London. And they hadn't really been outside Ohio at all. And one of the first places they went traveling, they went to Greve in Chianti, which is really halfway between Florence and Siena. Okay. And right south of Greve is a little village of Panzano. And this is in the very early 70s. I don't even remember the trip. And they just kind of kept going back and forth. And they fell in love with it, which is kind of a cliche for wine, but true in our case.
Very romantic part of the world when it comes to wine, of course.
Well, if you're from an old steel town in Ohio or Cleveland,
yeah, right.
and all of a sudden you're in the Tuscan Hills, it's impactful.
So they didn't have dreams of their son becoming a football player, you know.
Well, in football, but not soccer. Soccer.
Oh, soccer. Yeah.
Soccer,
oh, sorry.
soccer.
Yeah, the wrong one. Yeah,
once we moved.
So, and how long were they in London? Or
we were in England. I grew up in England. Never had a British accent. Always had this accent.
I was gonna say you've got this Queen's English going on.
It confuses everybody. Then we moved over to Italy in they started looking in the mid '80s. So
okay.
Yeah.
So
and then bought this property in Panzano in '96.
And so this is like a dream. I mean, how many people in America probably have this dream, right? I'm going to buy I'm going to buy a vineyard in Tuscany. I'm going to move out there. And they found a place for one.
It took 8 years.
Common? Yeah.
It took 8 years.
Really to find
Because it had to be Panzano. It had to be good quality. And Panzano is very famous in all of Italy for really growing some of the best Sangiovese in all of Italy.
Wow.
So it really took them 8 years because it had to be the right size because we're not doing this as a hobby. Also, we wanted to find a place where we could actually build the cantina, the winery. So that was 8 years. Yeah.
And so now it's a home. It's a tasting room.
We have the home. We have the cantina, the winery, tasting room, little guest house, and then of course about a terrible conversion. It's about 100 acres of planted vines.
44 hectares.
Yeah.
About 100 acres. And so the guest room has how many bedrooms? No, I'm just kidding.
So short waiting list.
You have your book here, and you've got some. That's a great stat.
San Francesco della Vigna, yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
It's an anniversary present from my mom, from my dad.
Already?
Yeah, it's about 30 feet high.
Wow.
In the middle of one of the higher vineyards, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. It was an anniversary present from my dad.
I was going to get my wife the same thing. I
just, a big 30-foot statue.
Let me get my glass for you. Thanks. So, was the winery active when you bought it, and if it wasn't, then why you chose these particular wines to make?
Well, there've been vineyards on the property for hundreds of years, but they'd always sold to all these fantastic local producers right around us. So
we were manufacturing anything.
No, we were the first people to actually make wine. So it took us only about 3 years to build the cantina. I know, which for Italy, I saw the look on your face. For Italy, it's lightning speed. And so the first vintage we did was 99, which was a great vintage in Tuscany to kind of kick off.
To start with, yeah. So
this wine, Il Volano, Molino di Grace, by the way, Grace our last name. In Italy, it's always Molino di Grace, which just confuses the Italians because Grace has no meaning in Italian.
That's really funny.
Molino's windmill in Italian. It's a whole historic landmark.
You can't add an I in there, make a Grazia or anything like that?
That would confuse them even more, probably.
Okay.
And Volano is just a millstone. And this is actually the only blended wine we make. It's just a Rossi di Toscana table wine, and it's Sangiovese and then Merlot, which really just sort of softens the Sangiovese and just makes it very easy drinking table wine.
Well, it's got great depth, I think, for what it is, and you know, in America, as you already know, table wine. The term table wine just means alcohol content. So, and you're meaning as sort of a country wine.
Every day.
And
every day. This is with again, these are it's a phrase that is overused for Italian wine.
Right.
But these are food wines.
Right.
You know, and that's the purpose of these wines.
I can see that. So, but wouldn't you call this a super Tuscan? After all, it's got Merlot in it, and all of a sudden it's super Tuscan.
You know, anything these days with IGT, they say super Tuscan.
Tuscan,
I see it as super Tuscan all the time. Yeah, I mean it's just it has a nice little finish to it. It's got some depth and some structure. It's a wine actually I'm really proud of, because frankly it's almost
good.
with really good. I get asked a lot, which one are you most proud of? And it's kind of easy to say the higher end wines, but with a good vintage, with good people, with good land, it's my bad if I don't make good wine
Yeah,
in the higher
right.
end. That's a little harder to do.
When you can make good wine. I mean, you can make bad wine from good grapes, but not good wine from bad grapes, and that's where it starts, right?
Yeah.
And so this, now we're going to move into 100% Sangiovese and the Chianti Classico, which Ponzano, that's the first time I've heard of that district, which is a very small district in Chianti Classico.
Very small village, yeah. But it got some very famous wineries in Italy, right in Panzano. We do a couple things a little bit, let's say, unusual. So one is the fact that it's 100% Sangiovese, which you used to not be allowed to do. You had to put white grapes in there, and now you can't. So
Right.
most producers blend with Cabernet, Syrah, Merlot. We just want to focus on the strength of the varietal, which is really being a fantastic food wine. Kind of, I said that before. And then, but to do that, we also have to hold the wines back a little bit in bottle. So this is 2010. Which we've just moved into. So typically you see 2010 or 2011 in the marketplace, but we want the wine to be really ready to drink when people open it.
I love the layers of this wine against, in 2000, it even seems young as 2010. It's still got plenty of life in it. And wonderful expression of Chianti Classico, because I see so many of them that are pretty insipid, kind of thin, but they say Classico, so they get good money for it, but that's a great value. Now this is really fun. This is the 06.
Which is current
Reserva,
vintage, yeah.
which are current vintage, showing nice brick colors.
Well, if you came to the winery, which everybody's invited to do, we like visitors, you would see we have we have stacks and stacks and stacks of bottles in our winery, more than most people because we hold the wines back. So I have got to hold back many more vintages than the typical producer. So I'm a little limited on space. So. And again, to give you an idea, typically you see 08 to 09 of Reserva, and this is 06. So again, these wines have many, many years left on them. Sangiovese, Chianti Classico, it ages beautifully.
It is beautiful. It's
The
really,
marketing hasn't quite caught up.
No.
But, what's inside the bottle, which is why they end up being pretty good value for Italian wines.
They are very good value, actually, based on what we taste, and that's what we do, basically, is find the value. And this has got a wonderful old world character to it. Certainly, you sense its age in the nose and the color, but I can see that with some really fun, like osso buco and stuff that's just really...
Oh, yeah, a piece of meat, like in our area, bistecca fiorentina.
Yeah.
Big piece of meat with it's thick and red, and something like this, just, it's a nice marriage in your mouth
really
with the
makes
mouthfeel. Yeah.
Makes it really happen.
Because Chianti Classico, Sangiovese, it's not supposed to fight in your mouth with the food. It's not supposed to overpower. It's not supposed to be overpowered. And I think these do that job very well.
And what's the Reserva requirement in that part of Tuscany? Well, in
So
Tuscany
the difference in law is
Yes.
one has 12% alcohol, 12.5 between normal Chianti Classico. Everybody does that. One is 1 year aging, Chianti Classico Reserva 2. We all do that. So
Okay.
for us, like many producers, it's much older vines, a much later harvest, more time in bottle. It's not like it's more oak or anything like that, but
No,
really that's
just gives it a little more attention, costs a little more to make, right? Because you got to hang on to it a little longer. And you got to age it. Now, you guys use new oak generally, or you a combination?
We use probably less new oak than a lot of our fellow producers. So on this one, it's half in new oak for 11 months, and on the Reserva, it's only a third. So this is also what people would call a Super Tuscan IGT wine, but it's still 100% Sangiovese. When we bought the property, there was one vineyard that was set apart from everywhere else. It was really our best vineyard. It's about 580 meters up, so that's 1,600, 1,700 feet, something like that. And it's just very old vine. It's about 60-year-old vines.
Really? Wow.
So I say
That's
about
great.
because it's Italy. The apologies to any Italian people out there, but the paperwork says like 3 different dates. If I average them, it's about 60-year-old vines. And for my family, who's very clearly, when I speak English, not from this place, a single vineyard, it just captures time, place, and varietal.
Yeah,
Like,
it really
it just
is.
is so focused. And I only do about 5,000 bottles of this, so it's just very limited production. And just as meant to capture this really special place that we're really lucky to be part of.
It's a very special wine, actually. It's one of the nicest Chiantis I've had
Thank you.
in a long time.
I appreciate that.
The character is there. It's got life. It's got depth. It's got layers. And you still can sense, you sense the age of the vines. You've manufactured that well. What's the yield there when you've got wines that?
Oh, it's like
vines-
1.5 tons.
Really? So
Yeah, it's
pretty
really
low.
low. Yeah, I mean it's a pretty decent sized vineyard, but it's we're our own worst enemies. We've what's inside the improvements within Chianti Classico and in Sangiovese over the past 30 years have been vast. So what you get in the bottle is fantastic. The marketing isn't quite caught up to that.
Yeah.
So like in Reserva, if you think of a great bottle of Italian wine, you're going to typically think of Barolo, Brunello, Amarone, Super Tuscan. The reality is for Chianti Classico Reserva, and not just my wines, but a lot of Chianti Classico Reserva, you can get a great bottle of wine, whatever that means to you, for half or
Half the
two-thirds of the
price,
price.
right.
Absolutely. So, I'm biased. Take it with a grain of salt.
Well, I'm also one of those guys that will lean towards like Rosa de Montalcinos instead of going after the Brunellos because you can find some really good values when you're in that district other than the classified stuff that's right. Down home.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
well, is the address on here?
On the inside.
Yeah,
It
so
is.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna,
yeah, no.
I'm
And
gonna put
directions-
that up.
and directions are in there, too.
directions are in there.
Yeah, we're
so when you
full
guys are
service.
out toward the center of Tuscany, you stop by Milano de Grace. Grazie.
Yeah. In Italy, it's Molino de Grace.
Pleasure to have you here, Tim. Thank you very much for joining
Grazie.
us. Bye-bye. Oh, yeah, we got to clean. Okay, here we go.